continue on with some readings from the Tao of Jeet Kune. We're on page 138. Questions or comments, go ahead and ask. Attain stillness while moving, like thy moon beneath the waves that ever go on rolling and rocking. Distance is a continually shifting relationship, depending on the speed, agility, and control of both fighters. It is a constant, rapid shifting of ground, seeking the slightest closing, which will greatly increase the chances of hitting the opponent. The maintenance of proper fighting distance has a decisive effect on the outcome of the fight. Acquire the habit. There must be close synchronization between closing and opening distance and the various actions of the hands and feet. To fight for any length of time within distance is safe only if you overwhelmingly outclass your opponent in speed and agility. When taking the guard, it is preferable to fall back a little too far than to come too close to your opponent. No matter how fast you are able to parry, if a man is close enough to you, he will arrive with his attack. For the nature of an attack is such that it gives advantage of the initiation to the attacker, providing the correct measure is there. Likewise, however accurate, fast, economical, and timely your attack may be, it will fall short unless you have calculated your distance well. Okay, cool. I like that song that you had on.
Oh yeah.
Whatever that was.
Are you trying to make a video? I'm sorry.
No. I'm making it right now, but I like that song.
Just let me know. Can you move the door?
The fighting measure is the distance which a fighter keeps in relation to his opponent. It is such that he cannot be hit unless his opponent lunges fully at him. It is essential that each man learn his own fighting measure. This means in a fight he must allow for the relative agility and speed of himself and his opponent. That is, he should consistently stay out of distance in the sense that his opponent cannot reach him with a simple punch, but not so far that with a short advance he cannot regain the distance and be able to reach his opponent with his own powerful attack. If fighters are constantly on the move when fighting, it is because they are trying to make their opponent misjudge his distance while being well aware of their own. Thus, a fighter is constantly gaining and breaking ground in his effort to obtain the distance which suits him best. Develop the reflex of always maintaining a correct measure. Instinctive distance pacing is of utmost importance. The shielded fighter always keeps himself just out of distance of the opponent's attack and waits for his opportunity to close the distance himself or to steal a march on the opponent's advance. Attack on the opponent's advance or change of distance toward you. Back him to a wall to cut off his retreat, or retreat yourself to draw an advance. The majority of fencers, when they are preparing an attack or trying to avoid one, take turns advancing and retreating. This procedure is not advisable in fighting because the advance and retreat during the assault must be made rapidly, by bounds and at irregular intervals in such a fashion that the adversary does not notice the action until it is too late. The opponent should be lulled, then the attack should be launched as suddenly as possible, accommodating itself to the automatic movements, including the possible retreat of the opponent. The art of successful kicking and hitting is the art of correct distance judging. An attack should be aimed at the distance where the opponent will be when he realizes he is being attacked, and not at the distance prior to the attack. The slightest error can render the attack harmless. An attack will rarely succeed unless you can lodge yourself at the correct distance at the moment it is launched. A parry is most likely to succeed if it can be made just as the opponent is at the end of his lunge. Many a chance to repulse is missed by the defender stepping back completely out of distance when he parries. To these examples must be added the obvious importance of choosing the correct measure, as well as timing and cadence when making a counterattack by stop hit or time hit. Marcelli, past master of fencing, said, "The question whether it is necessary to know in advance the tempo or the distance is a matter for the philosopher rather than the swordsman to decide. Just the same, it is certain that the combatant has to observe simultaneously both the tempo and the distance, and he has to comply with both simultaneously with the action if he wishes to reach his object." The fighting measure is also governed by the amount of target to be protected, the targets the adversary stresses, and the parts of the body which are most easily within the adversary's reach. The shin is most vulnerable and is constantly threatened. If the opponent specializes in shin knee kicking, you have to take his measure from shin to shin. When the correct distance is obtained, the attack should be carried through with an instantaneous burst of energy and speed. A fighter who is in constant state of physical fitness is more apt to get off the mark in a fraction of a second, and therefore to seize an opportunity without warning. Distance in attack. The first principle for fastest contact in attacking from a distance is using the longest to get at the closest. Examples: in kicking, the leading shin knee side kick with the lean. In striking, the finger jab to eyes. Study the progressive weapons charts. The second principle is economical initiation, non-telegraphic. Apply latent motor training to intuition. The third principle is correct on-guard position to facilitate freedom of movement, ease. Use the small facing bent knee position. The fourth principle is constant shifting of footwork to secure the correct measure. Use broken rhythm to confuse the opponent's distance while controlling one's own. The fifth principle is catching the opponent's moment of weakness, physically as well as psychologically. The sixth principle is correct measure for explosive penetration. The seventh principle is quick recovery or appropriate follow-ups. The X principle is courage and decision. Distance in defense. The first principle for using distance as defense is combining sensitive aura with coordinated footwork. The second principle is good judgment of the opponent's length of penetration, a sense for receiving his straightening weapon, to borrow the half beat. The third principle is correct on-guard position to facilitate freedom of movement, ease. Use small facing bent knee position. The fourth principle is the use of controlled balance in motion without moving out of position. Study evasiveness. One can only develop an instinctive sense of distance if he is able to move about smoothly and speedily. The quality of a man's technique depends on his footwork, for one cannot use his hands or kicks efficiently until his feet have put him in the desired position. If a man is slow on his feet, he will be slow with his punches and kicks. Mobility and speed of footwork precedes speed of kicks and punches. Mobility is definitely stressed in Jeet Kune because combat is a matter of motion, an operation of finding a target or of avoiding being a target. In this art, there is no nonsense of squatting on a classical horse dance for 3 long hours before moving. This type of unnecessary strenuous standing is not functional, for it is basically a seeking of firmness and stillness. In Jeet Kune one finds firmness in movement, which is real, easy, and alive. Therefore, springiness and alertness of footwork is the theme. During sparring, a sparmate is constantly on the move to make his opponent misjudge his distance, while being quite certain of his own. In fact, the length of the step forward and backward is regulated to that of his opponent. A good man always maintains such a position as to enable him, while keeping just out of range, to be yet near enough to immediately take an opening, reference to fighting measure. Thus, at a normal distance, he is able to prevent his opponent from attacking him by his fine sense of distance and timing. As a result, his opponent is then compelled to keep shortening his distance to come nearer and nearer until he is too near. Mobility is vitally important in defense as well, for a moving target is definitely harder to hit and kick. Footwork can and will beat any kick or punch. The more adept a fighter is at footwork, the less does he make use of his arms in avoiding kicks and blows. By means of skillful and timely sidestepping and slipping, he can get clear of almost any kick and punch, thus preserving both of his guns, as well as his balance and energy for counters. Also, by constantly being in small motion, the fighter can initiate a movement much more snappily than from a position. It is not recommended, therefore, that you stay too long in the same spot. Always use short steps to alter the distance between you and your opponent. Vary the length of your step, however, as well as the speed, for added confusion to your opponent. Footwork in Jeet Kune tends to aim towards simplification with a minimum of movement. Do not get carried away and stand on your toes and dance all over the place like a fancy boxer. Economical footwork not only adds speed, but by moving just enough to evade the opponent's attack, it commits him fully. The simple idea is to get where you are safe and he isn't. Above all, footwork should be easy and relaxing. The feet are kept at a comfortable distance apart according to the individual, without any strain or awkwardness. By now, the reader should see the unrealistic approach of the traditional classical footwork and stances. They are slow and awkward, and to put it plainly, nobody moves like that in a fight. A martial artist is required to shift in any direction at split-second notice. Moving is used as a means of defense, a means of deception, a means of securing proper distance for attack, and a means of conserving energy. The essence of fighting is the art of moving. Footwork enables you to break ground and escape punishment, to get out of a tight corner, to allow the heavy slugger to tire himself in his vain attempts to land a devastating punch. It also puts pep into the punch. The greatest phase of footwork is the coordination of punching and kicking in motion. Without footwork, the fight is like artillery that cannot be moved, or a policeman in the wrong place at the wrong time. The value of a couple of good hands and fast, powerful kicking depends mostly on their being on a well-balanced and quickly movable base. It is essential, therefore, to preserve the balance and poise of the fighting turret carrying your artillery. No matter in what direction or at what speed you move, your aim is to retain the fundamental stance, which has been found the most effective for fighting. Let the movable pedestal be as nimble as possible. The correct style in fighting is that which, in its absolute naturalness, combines velocity and power of hitting with the soundest defense. Good footwork means good balance in action, and from this springs hitting power and the ability to avoid punishment. Every movement involves the coordination of hands, feet, and brain. A fighter should not be flat-footed, but should feel the floor with the balls of his feet as though they were strong springs, ready to accelerate or retard his movements as required by changing conditions. Use the feet cleverly to maneuver and combine balanced movement with aggression and protection. Above all, keep cool. The foundation is sensitivity of order. The second is aliveness and naturalness. The third is instinctive pacing, distance and timing. The fourth is correct placement of the body. The fifth is a balanced position at the end. Use your own footwork and your opponent's to your advantage. Note his pattern, if any, of advancing and retreating. Vary the length and speed of your own step. The length of the step forward or backward should be approximately regulated to that of the opponent. Variations of measure will make it more difficult for the opponent to time his attacks or preparations. A fighter with a good sense of distance or one who is difficult to reach in launching an attack may often be brought to the desired measure by progressively shortening a series of steps backward or by gaining distance toward him when he lunges, stealing the march. The simplest and most fundamental tactic to use on an opponent is to gain just enough distance to facilitate a hit. The idea is to press advance a steps or so and then fall back, retreat, inviting the opponent to follow. Allow your opponent to advance a step or two, and then at the precise moment he lifts his foot or still another step, you must suddenly lunge forward into his step. An opponent difficult to reach may be reached by a series of progressive steps. The first one must be smooth and economical. Small and rapid steps are recommended as the only way to keep perfect balance, exact distance, and ability to apply sudden attacks or counterattacks. Sure footwork and balance are necessary to be able to advance and retreat in and out of distance with respect to both your own and your opponent's reach. Knowing when to advance and when to retreat is also knowing when to attack and when to protect. A good man steals, creates, and changes the vital spatial relations to the confusion of his opponent. Practice your footwork with a view to keeping a very correct and precise distance in relation to your opponent, and move just enough to accomplish your purpose. Fine distancing will make the opponent strive that much harder, and thus bring him close enough to be subject to efficient counter blows. To move at the right time is the foundation of great skill in fighting. Not just to move at the right time, but also to be in the best position for attack or counter. It means balance, but balance in movement. Having your feet in the correct position serves as a pivot for your entire attack. It balances you properly and lends unseen power to your blows, just as it does in sports like baseball where drive and power seem to come up from the legs. To maintain balance while constantly shifting body weight is an art few ever acquire. Correct placement of your feet will ensure balance and mobility. Experiment with yourself. You must feel with your footwork. Rapid and easy footwork is a matter of correct distribution of weight. The ideal position of the feet is one that enables you to move quickly in any direction and to be so balanced as to resist blows from all angles. Remember the small facing bent knee stance. The rear heel is raised because when you punch, you transfer all your weight quickly to your lead leg. This is easier if the rear heel is already slightly raised. When you are punched and have to give a bit, you sink down on the rear heel. This acts as a kind of spring and takes the edge out of a punch. It makes the back foot easier to move. The rear heel is the piston of the whole fighting machine. The feet must always be directly under the body. Any movement of the feet which tends to unbalance the body must be eliminated. The on-guard position is one of perfect body balance and should always be maintained, especially as regards the feet. Wide steps or leg movements which require a constant shift in weight from one leg to the other cannot be used. During this shift in weight, there is a moment when balance is precarious and so renders attack or defense ineffective. Also, the opponent can time your shifting for his attack. Short steps while moving ensure balance and attack. Also, the body balance is always maintained so that any offensive or defensive movement required is not limited or impaired as the fighter moves forward, backward, or circles his opponent. Thus, it is better to take 2 medium steps rather than one long one to cover the same distance. Variations of measure will make it more difficult for the opponent to time his attacks or preparation. Unless there is a tactical reason for acting otherwise, gaining and breaking ground is executed by means of small and rapid steps. A correct distribution of weight on both legs will make for perfect balance, enabling the fighter to get off the mark quickly and easily whenever the measure is right for attacks. Lighten the stance so that the force of inertia to be overcome will be less. The best way to learn proper footwork is to shadow box many rounds, giving special attention to becoming light on your feet. Gradually, this way of stepping around will become natural to you and you will do it easily and mechanically without giving it a thought. You should operate in the same manner as a graceful ballroom dancer who uses the feet, ankles, and calves. He slithers around the floor. The ascent is on speed footwork and the tendency toward attack with a step forward. Drill, 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 often combined with the attack on the hand. There are only 4 moves possible in footwork: advancing, retreating, circling right, circling left. However, there are important variations of each, as well as the necessity of coordinating each fundamental movement with punches and kicks. The following are some examples. Forward shuffle. This is a forward advance of the body without disturbing body balance, which can only be performed through a series of short steps forward. These steps must be so small that the feet are not lifted at all, but slide along the floor. The whole body maintains the fundamental position throughout. This is the key. Once body feel results, combine the step with tools. The body is poised for either sudden attack or a defensive maneuver. Its primary purpose is to create openings by the opponent's defensive reactions and to draw leads. The backward shuffle. The principle is the same as that of the forward shuffle. Do it without disturbing the on-guard position. Remember that both feet are on the floor at all times, permitting balance to be maintained for attack or defense. It is used to draw leads or to draw the opponent off balance, thus creating openings. The quick advance. Remember that through this is a fast, sudden movement forward. Balance must be kept. The body flattens toward the floor rather than leaping into the air. It is not a hop. In all respects, it is the same as a wide step forward, where the rear foot is brought immediately into position. Get the body feel with tools. The step forward and step back. Gaining and break of ground may be used as a preparation of attack. The step forward is obviously used to obtain the correct distance for attacking, and the step back can be used to draw the opponent within distance. Drawing an opponent usually means drawing out of distance from a lead by swinging back from the hips or making use of the feet in such a way that the lead will just fall short. Its object is to lure your opponent within reach at a critical moment while staying out of reach yourself. The step forward will add speed to the attack when it is combined with a feint, forcing the opponent to commit himself, or preparation to tie it and close the boundaries. If the step forward is made with the line of engagement covered, the attacker will be in the best position to deal with the stop hit launched during his movement. The step back can be used tactically against an opponent who has formed the habit of retiring whenever any feint or other offensive movement is made, and is, therefore, very difficult to reach, especially if he is superior in height and length. Constant steps forward and back with a carefully regulated length can conceal the player's intentions and enable him to lodge himself at the ideal distance for an attack, often as the opponent is off balance. Circling right. The right lead becomes a movable pivot that wheels the whole body to the right until the correct position is resumed. The first step with the right foot may be as short or as long as necessary. The longer the step, the greater the pivot. The fundamental position must be maintained at all times. The right hand should be carried a little higher than ordinary in readiness for the opponent's left counter. Moving to the right may be used to nullify an opponent's right lead hook. It may be used to get into position for left hand counters, and it can be used to keep the opponent off balance. The important things to remember are never step so as to cross the feet. Move deliberately and without excess motion. Circling left. This is a more precise movement rather requiring shorter steps. It is used to keep out of range of rare left-hand blows from a right stancer. It also creates good position for the delivery of a hook or jab. It is more difficult but safer than moving to the right, and therefore should be used more often.
Repeat that one.
Circling left. This is a more precise movement requiring shorter steps. It is used to keep out of range of rear left-hand blows from a right stancer. It also creates a good position for the delivery of a hook or jab. It is more difficult but safer than moving to the right, and therefore should be used more often. Step in, step out. This is the start of offensive maneuver, often used as a feint in order to build up an opening. The foot movement is always combined with kicking and punching movement. The initial movement, the step in, is directly in, with the hands held high as if to hit or kick, then out quickly before the opponent can adjust his defense. Lull the opponent with this maneuver, then attack when he is motor set. The quick retreat. This is a fast, fluid, forceful backward movement, allowing further retreat if necessary, or stepping forward to attack if desired. It is necessary to combine a step back with a parry. It is because one is pressed for time. The parry must, therefore, be made at the beginning of the retreating movement, that is to say, when the rear foot moves. When the opponent's offensive action is a compound one, the correct coordination will be to perform the first parry simultaneously with the movement of the rear foot, and the remaining parry or parries simultaneously with the retreating lead foot. The step back can be taken first, but this should only be the case when the attack has been parried with a step forward, and not when the attack has been made with a step forward. To a man with quick footwork and a good lead, the art comes easily enough. It is a continuous process of hit and away. As your opponent moves in, you meet him with a defensive hit with the lead and immediately step back. And then as he follows up, you repeat the process, continually retreating around the ring. As you do so, frequently check yourself in your stride and temporarily stop to meet him with a straight right or left, or occasionally both. Let's work on some of the nunchucks in the other room.